Thanks, Rahul and Richard, for joining. This is great to have you both on board. We'll get today into two startups. They are both from Bolivia. They are different verticals. One is on management and softwares, and then there's the other one is on mobility and logistics. So they are very different, both early stage. So you will guys you are familiar with early stage, both of you. So let's get into the first one.
Yeah.
On the first one, we have Easy. This is an SMBs management software tool. They have processed over 4.8 million transactions. They have over 900 clients, 90% renewal rate, cash positive since March 2023. They've been doing a lot of business in Bolivia, mainly that's their main market. And they open with the market slide. Does this give you an idea of, okay, what are they trying to achieve in the region?
Usually the market size comes a bit, later, right? I think I would have preferred to see more about, obviously a bit about them and a bit about the company, and then also the problem they're actually, tackling. I think that's more important. And then the market size, sort of to validate the numbers and the size that this could be $1 billion business is probably what comes later on, right? But yeah, there's not one size fits all approach, but that's probably what I would like to see.
Yeah, same here. Market doesn't feel like it makes sense right now because two really good things. So two observations thus far. One is SMB, what is it? Management software kind of process.
It's
stuff.
Small and medium businesses. Yep.
Right. There's 1 million of these out there, right? And so I need to know what problem they're solving, because right now in my mind, I'm thinking about the 25 different companies in this space that I've talked to in the last month, and I have no idea where to put them. So you've got to address the problem in that market first. And the other reason I think the market slide isn't needed right now is they have good traction numbers. A lot of people don't have the traction at this stage. The fact that they've had 4.8 million and they're cash flow positive or whatever that is, in my mind, that's already validated a lot of the other stuff. I really now want to know the problem and what's their solution. So that's kind of my mindset.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, agreed there.
So actually the problem is the next slide. So this is what they are doing. This is what they are tackling. So they are tackling SMEs in Latam that they go bankrupt due to poor business management. Most of them do not survive after the first 3 years, roughly 80%, because there's inefficient management and slow digital adoption. So now you get an idea of the problem, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's clear. It's not too many words on the slide. It's pretty simple. It stands out, whenever it says 80% of these businesses do not survive first 3 years. It shows that it is a massive problem, right? And then I think it's just validating that information later, whether is that actually true, that is it that 80% number, because that's quite a large number, but then it depends on, I guess, how much of it in Bolivia is digital, right? A lot of it is probably very transactions of pen and paper, things like this. So that's probably it probably does make sense, the numbers.
So initially, again, this is a really good point of why this should come before the market in my mind, is that I thought they were again, it was very unclear what they did. If they're literally keeping companies in business, that's the problem they're solving. That's huge. That's applicable if I'm an investor, if I'm a partner, if I'm a user, if I'm a founder, right? Most companies in this space do go out of business in 3 years. We know that.
Yeah.
What they're saying is we've identified a reason and we're addressing that reason.
Yeah.
So from a storytelling perspective, it's a very powerful pain point that they're addressing. And it should be, they should kind of lead with that.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
Completely. So now let's get into what they are actually doing. So this is a problem that they're solving, but this is what Easy is doing. So also we see a simple slide. We empower MSME through technology that boosts their sales and operations with simple yet powerful tools helping them thrive. And there's a list of their tools over here.
So they're like a one-stop shop for mom and pop stores, pretty much. Sort of seems to be that that sort of strategy I think they're going down.
Yeah, so we can see a bit more graphical what the product looks like.
Yeah.
So do you get a?
Well, I think that you said right there, their solution is clear. I mean, as I can say, right, is the different services for the MSMEs and things like this, right? Small and medium-sized businesses. So yeah, I don't have a problem on the solution. I think it's just maybe why there's so many products that early, maybe, is my sort of feedback. Especially, maybe it's, as I say, when you first start out, maybe focus on one or two like core killer products and then expand sort of as you grow the business. So that's probably my only concern on that area, right?
I don't have anything here to say. I mean, it seems a little vague, and so I'll just wait for it to kind of keep going.
Yeah, perfect. So what do you think about the product, illustrations? Does it make it clear what they're doing, or it doesn't add too much except, okay, this looks like a solid product. It
No.
exists, but I don't really understand more from the
I mean,
illustrations.
yeah. I mean, I think it's fine. I think it's, maybe less graphics is even okay. You need one or two pictures, maybe one for each side of the business is probably enough. So I wouldn't really worry too much. I'm more interested on actually that, the problem, as I say, one or two lines of in the solution is fine for me.
Yeah. I don't think it adds any. So in my mind, it's like a waste of time, waste of space. Yeah, it doesn't really do much.
So now we get into the team. This is the team, the founders, all the C-suite of Easy.
Mhm. So maybe my point here is, as I say, having seen like loads of, like, as I say, hundreds, thousands of pitch decks, it would be great to see maybe like their background before what they've done. So like, the CEO, CTO, COO, not necessarily where they came from, right? But what did they do before this? Do they have area of expertise in that particular sector? Things like that, right? 20, for example, that's the most important thing I would say. 3 executive advisors, 21 full-time collaborators is good, but it's not the most important thing in the team, right? The most important thing is, the CEO, the CTO, and maybe the COO, right? I think those are the 3 most important teams. And here I don't really even know who's the founder, who's actually like co-founders of the business and who's working this full time. So that's what I would like to see, right? Yeah.
Echoing everything Richard said, summarizing. One is I need to know who the founder is or the co-founders. Number 2, as much as we may or may not like signaling is super important in this industry at this stage. So throw those logos there. Where'd you go to college? Anything that resonates locally, like that's what you're trying to build relationships. The point of a pitch deck is to get the next meeting. And so if somebody went to the university you went to, like that immediately draws some connection. You don't know how many people are going to see this deck when it's circulated. So put the brands up there that show where you're from. I mean, I don't know, put the countries you're from, whatever you want to do
I
to
guess
signal
something
that.
unique, right? What they
Yeah.
have that others don't. It doesn't necessarily need to be the college or whatever they went to, right? It's more just so like, why them, right? Why this team? That's probably the most important thing.
And the third thing is the 21 collaborators and 3 advisors, that to me sometimes confuses quantity for quality. Yeah, I see that as a positive, but easily somebody could see that and say, wow, that's a lot of management that they're doing. And if I don't know of what they're doing, I don't know if these people are bringing value to the company. It could turn some people off to be like, wow, that's a really bloated team for somebody.
Or again, bloated cap table and advisory
Yeah.
shares as well.
Yeah. So I don't think that adds much, and it potentially could take away. So I would probably remove that 21 and 3 because that doesn't really add anything to the situation.
Yeah.
Completely. So then now we get into attraction. Maybe this would make it more understandable if they have a bloated team or not, based on the numbers they are actually
Yeah.
pulling. What do you think of these on a first glance?
You always see the hockey stick, right? That's always you see a lot of these companies see it go up and up, right? I mean, it's not always like that, but I mean, like, it sort of stands out, right? I mean, obviously the gross margin, it's a software, right? So it's usually the gross margin is going to be really, really high anyway. The revenue retention is good. The renewal rate is good. I mean, the transaction proceed is good. So, I mean, everything is going up, right? So it's just from an investor point of view, there's growth in the business. But I mean, like, yeah, sometimes you get like 28x or like 104x. I mean, I spend less time on those things because it's just like, it's just from 2019 to 2023, right? I'm more interested in seeing what's their progress been from, mid 2023 to now, right? How they executed the last 3-6 months. So that's the most, I would say, most important for me.
Yeah, so I've got a complicated answer here. So the slide is nice. The slide shows all the stuff you want to see. It's got some really impressive numbers. It's got dollar amounts in there, which means there's real money involved. But I don't think they've done a great job of giving context that leads up to this slide. So I still don't know what transaction they're processing. I have no idea what their product does. And the interesting thing about data is you can easily spin data to tell an awesome story, but without context, these numbers mean nothing. So 90% renewal, these are all kick-ass stats. At this stage in the deck, I have no idea what transactions are actually processing. I have no idea of who's paying for this. I don't know again, I don't need to get into deep business models, but I need to have some idea of how revenue is generated. And so without any context, this is what could be an A+++ slide, but without context, it's like a C+ to me because I don't know what any of this stuff actually means in the terms of their business and on the data.
Completely. So you think that maybe the solution side lacked a bit more of information, a bit more of clarity?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that ties into my thing of like, those 2 slides with the images and the graphics, like so can I just jump in with like my conundrum here is like, there's team and dream slides, right? There's like pre-product companies that are pitching. This feels a lot like a pre-product company when in reality, it's clearly post-product. It's clearly post-revenue. They've got tons of traction. The idea of this deck here really should be, this was the initial problem that we saw in the market. We launched an MVP and boom, I would love to see 3 slides of like really numbers, wonky stuff that shows, number one, the actual real life, what they're doing, the transactions, the data, whatever. And then as an investor, I want to know the insights, right? As any investor, you want to know what are the pivots between pre-seed and seed and whatever. So great, you've got this in the hands of all these users and it's doing 5 million transactions. What are the insights or learnings that you've gotten that have now informed you on what you're going to do for the next 18 months? As an investor, that's all I really care about. And so, we're already 6 slides in. They've got this amazing thing, but I still don't know what they do. And I don't know how they're helping and what they're doing.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, so I think that will become clear, but it's a good feedback because they have included these, but it's just a bit more down below the deck. So it's a bit more.
I think it's the order.
So it may be an issue of the order of the deck. Here we can see, these are very strong brands. They show they are consolidating in Bolivia. In different cities, they are number 1. They're talking a bit about the go-to-market plan, but now they get a bit more into the business model and they explain what are they segmenting on, what are their options as a software solution.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's all here. I think they just have to flip the order around. I think in a deck like this, everybody knows, hopefully a lot of the folks that we work with, that you guys work with, know that like you put your blood, sweat, and tears into a deck. And if you put it on something like DocSend, you realize the reality of how many people never even get past the 4th slide. And so you want to put your hard hitting stuff in the first 3-4 slides, because that's when you have them hooked on whether they'll even read the rest of your stuff and set up the meeting or not. And so I worry that the way it's formatted right now, a lot of the really, really valuable stuff is too far down deep into the deck.
Completely. So, okay, so now with these, you would understand a bit more, what are they doing? And this would look great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Look, I think overall, as you mentioned, right, it would have been good to see the more important stuff earlier on. And then, because as I mentioned, right, it's sort of viewed as a very early company. It looked as a very early company when it wasn't a very early company, right? So, yeah, I mean, as I say, some people would spend time to view it, but some wouldn't, right? So it sort of depends how many people would want to look that far to see, get to where the traction is, and it's actually not that sort of business, right? So as Rahul mentioned, I think that's a very valid point. But I mean, overall, it's they had good numbers. They put in like decent, like they have a decent business model. They have a scalable business as well. They have like data points to show that. I think it's just maybe the deck could have been a bit better in the beginning. So yeah.
And I think there's one, after a deck, you want to leave the person reading it with a set of questions that makes them want to do a follow-up call or whatever. But you want the questions to be, you don't want the questions to be like, I'm a little confused, or like, I don't know if there's focus here. And so the one thing, again, like this is random, this is not, but the fact that they started with this kind of problem statement of 80% of companies go out of business in 3 years makes you think that they're working with really small SMBs, which is what they initially said. But then when it got to their logo page, I saw Pepsi. And so I think to myself, like there's an enterprise client, but they're targeting SMBs. Then it leaves these weird questions in your head to be like, God, the story wasn't very clear. They say they're doing one thing. Was Pepsi just a brother-in-law working there who gave them, like, you don't really know. And so, I think a little more clarity and focus around, this is who we are. This is the problem. This is what we do. This is the success. It felt a little vague for somebody at their stage of traction.
So let's get into the second one now. I'm going to share my screen
Okay.
again. This is a bit different. We're going to shift away from software slightly, but we're going to change a bit more into hardware and software, the combination. So now we have Mobi Latam, also from Bolivia, but they're now changing the game for last mile delivery riders. They have reached break even in November 2022. They have their own built fleet that for increased tech control, shorter delivery time, and continuous improvement. And they have an initial pilot with Pedidos. I don't know if you guys know, but this is one of the biggest. It's like Delivery Hero bought them a while back. So they get right into the problem. So you can guys take a look and think, do you understand what they are doing?
Yeah.
I think, as I said, it's clear, right? Maybe they could have less words. That's it. Maybe they could have like 1 or 2 bullet points. It's like, okay, what is like the main problem, right? For example, here it's like, okay, instead of talking about the explosive growth, they could talk about like, there's many drivers and they struggle for certain things, and the CO2 emissions and why that's a problem, and then that's it, right? I think that is more than enough.
So to me, my answer to this is incomplete because I don't know what's coming next, because this slide actually has a couple of problems packed in there. So this talks about the system is broken, right? There's a system that's broken. And then it talks about, there's a climate issue in here. Is it the gig economy worker who has the problem? Is it the companies that don't have enough? So they basically talked about a whole set of problems, but I don't know which customer or which of those problems are actually focusing on. So if the next couple slides don't narrow that problem focus anymore, then this is not a great slide. But if it does say that out of this whole crazy conundrum, we've really realized it's the last mile worker who XYZ, and then this is good. So
let's see if they do manage to narrow it down. So now we get into the solution. They get straight into the product.
Oh, wow. This is cool.
Does this make it a bit more clear to you guys? Is there too much information, or is it a good slide that comes after the problem that they just stated?
I think they could have mentioned more of the solution, more, as I say, maybe less text to that point. They could have added the sort of explaining more about the core business model, a separate slide, and then maybe explain the unit economics about how that works. But I guess you probably explain it later. So yeah, I mean, the solution could have just been like subscription based electric motorbike, and mentioned 1 or 2 things, right, instead of doing the whole thing. But I don't think it's too much of an issue. But that's the only thing I'd say.
Yeah. So for me, one, this is really cool. I have no idea what it is, but it looks really cool. So I'm already leaning in. But 2, I don't think it's clear. Yeah, I think there's a step missing in between the first slide and this slide, because I don't know who wants this. Usually when you read a solution in your mind, whether it's a movie or a book or a pitch deck or whatever, a solution, you have to know who wants that solution. So who is clamoring? Who is the one saying, oh my God, I need a subscription-based electronic vehicle? Is it the drivers themselves? Is it the companies? Is it the government who wants cleaner air? Like, it's very unclear on who actually, like, kind of what I said earlier. Like, I don't know which of the problems this is solving and who actually wants
Maybe it gets
this thing.
clearer now.
Because outside of that, it's just a really cool thing.
Maybe it gets clearer now that we get
Yeah.
into the market. So now they enumerate, it's the writers market is huge. They now state who their client is, and they give estimates on what are the market sizes from the countries they are attacking.
Yeah, I mean, the 2.4 billion TAM makes sense. Their goal 240 makes sense as well. Maybe the initial market, if you're looking from a VC outcome, maybe might be quite low from a revenue point. Yeah, but I mean the market size is clear, right? It shows that it could be a very big business, but it's just whether they expand. They need to expand across Latam, right, to get that market share. Whereas if they're in Bolivia, Paraguay, Peru, right, that gets them to 10 million. If right now they're only in one or two of those countries, that's even smaller, right? So I guess if you're looking from a VC point of view, is it too small enough business, right? But I mean, it's clear to understand. Overall, it's just the initial market could, yeah. I mean, it's that's what probably stood out to me, like in not a good as way. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a market slide.
Yeah. And now they detail a bit more their clients, writers. So the writers' OPEX, what is it currently now? The cost structure for them, so we can see that they mostly spend on fuel, maintenance, insurance, tax, and how much they are actually, what are their emissions per month. So just to give a bit more information on the problem.
Yeah, so first.
Yeah. I'm starting to see the problem now. But you know what? Like, this is the thing. You don't want to make the reader have to put the puzzle pieces together. You want to tell them up front. But it sounds like this is for writers. It feels to me like the gig economy is exploding. More and more people are now doing last mile delivery in first, second, third, fourth, every country in the world. That's just true universally. But the unit economics of actually using a vehicle that needs maintenance, insurance, tax, whatever, makes it challenging for the gig economy worker to actually like make a living off of this. And so, wow, we introduced this now subscription thing where basically you lease it from us. All of these expenses are gone from your thing. And now it's easier for you to make a living off of this. And oh, by the way, it's better for the environment. To me, that's the story that's now starting to formulate. But again, the order of operations probably felt a little off because we're already, 4 slides in, and I'm just kind of, you haven't told me yet. I'm kind of figuring it out.
Completely. Now they get into the unit economics. This is if riders would use their scooter. We see that, the monthly subscription costs 125. This is how much they save in emissions, and, the gross margin in total for each of the scooters rented.
So whose margin is that? That's these guys' margin.
Yes, this is Mobi's margin.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they could have simplified it a bit, like in terms of the way they structured the slide. But yeah, I mean, as I say, it's quite simple to understand.
Yeah. I do think the CO2 stuff, honestly, just confuses. It's like this added thing on every slide that shows that there's an environmental impact, but I don't know if they're just, I don't know. It doesn't simplify things. It almost confuses things to be like, is this an environmental play or like an economic play for the gig worker?
So what they are doing is they're producing electric vehicles. I don't know if you guys understood that so far.
Oh, no, yeah, that's clear. Yeah.
No, I'm saying it's a feature, right? So when you think about products, value, and features, the environmental thing is a fantastic feature. I agree. It's the top feature. But when it's almost like every time they say something, there's like a value statement and then there's a feature that kind of gets pulled to the top, and it doesn't always match. Maybe it's a separate slide that just says, oh, by the way, and on top of all of this, one of the biggest, primary features is that there's this
Mhm.
massive environmental impact that makes this marketable to governments, local agencies, whatever. So,
Yep. Now they get a bit into the competitors. We can skip this for now, and then they talk a bit more about the team. Do you think this is a bit more clear compared to the other slide on?
I mean, I would say it's a bit better,
Mhm.
like in terms of overall, like they have the logo combined experience. But then again, who worked where, right? Or who did what would probably be better. Like, I mean, if it's just one logo or two, or a bit terms for each one, then I can say, okay, why is this person best fit for CEO? Or why is this person best fit for CTO, COO? Yeah, it's pretty standard, right?
yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, it's just better than the last one before. The way they've structured it.
Yeah. Look, this is, part of it is the psychology, right? As an investor, some of these things, like it feels weird to say out loud, but like, this is the truth. And is at the end of the day, when an investor is writing a big check to a company, right? They want to know ultimately, where does the buck stop, right? They want to understand when things are going good or things are going bad, or I need updates. Who's the person I call? And on both this slide and the other one, it's very unclear on who's the leader. Yes, there's a CEO, but in many times the CEO is not the founder or whatever. It just needs to be very, very clear that, like, okay, the buck stops with this person. So I think identifying the founder or co-founders is important. I think, to Richard's point, kind of tying the logos with who went where. And again, I don't love it. It is signaling 100%, but unfortunately at this point of the funding cycle, when there isn't a ton of data, like, signaling is relatively important, of seeing, like, where does the buck stop?
Completely. And what do you guys think? Do you think that you managed to understand what they are doing? Did you feel excited at some point? Did they manage to have something memorable for you?
I think what was interesting for me was the market size, in terms of, the showing that, okay, it's a big, if they could get enough market share in that time, it could be quite a big business, right? And then, yeah, as you can say, and then the unit economics as well, to show that they can be a scalable but profitable business, was probably the other one. So, yeah, other than that, those are probably the main things, right? But yeah, the problem, like, I would have liked to see like a combination of like the problem and then, them using the market size, explaining of it, how it could be, how many people have, have this problem, right? Or how many of these drivers have this problem, right? That would be better. I think, than just like, because I think they put too many points and then didn't explain all those points, right? They sort of explained like one or two. So yeah.
Yeah, I think very similar on my end. I think, it's very exciting. I like this. I like this a lot. And I think, to our earlier conversation, Bautista, where you see venture going, this is the type of company a venture capital fund or firm would be interested in investing in. Because if there's a massive opportunity and there's proven demand and there's a proven growth kind of happening and momentum, you're going to need money to build these bikes. Like, you're just going to need money to build the next 10,000 bikes. And so this is where money and influx of capital feels like, God, if we got it today, boom, there's overwhelming demand for it. I think what left me wanting a little bit more was, again, there's an opportunity to tell a very clear, powerful story here. And I don't think it was super clear. And can I just give an example of maybe what I would do if
Sure.
I was
Yeah.
in their shoes of the first slide? I would make it a math equation, right? This is one of those really cool opportunities where the opportunity is in the margin. And so, but it's not, it wasn't stated clearly. If there was a slide that said last mile delivery is booming in Latin America, it has gone from X to Y in the past 4 years. So they tell the story driven by data and evidence that it's gone from 1 million workers weekly to 10 million a week. Okay, now it shows that there's a bunch of these people. Then the next one, it says the average worker, like, literally get into the wallet of that one guy who is doing last mile and say the average monthly income is 1,000. but the cost of the bike and all the other stuff that they broke down on that other slide is $1,100. And so this person is not making money. But we have a solution that costs $500. And so immediately, anybody who knows numbers will say, wow, that's a cheaper alternative than what this guy's currently doing. And then, oh, by the way, that 500 solution, our cost is only 250. So we've got a margin built in there. And so all of a sudden on one slide using numbers, and again, not just numbers that are made up, but like actual numbers, you can now, it's very clear from a business, you don't even have to do a business model slide. It's very clear. And I think they did some of that, but it was never organized. They did say that they sell this thing for $125 a month and half of that is their margin. Now, all they need to show is that on a monthly basis, the average gig worker is spending $300 in expenses and only making $200. And so right now they're underwater. But if they replace the 300 with 125, now they're dying for it. And now all of a sudden it's like, dude, you've made the story. They're like, we need to build 10,000 more of these things. All of a sudden people are going to be lining up to say, great, you've kind of de-risked this for us and you've proven demand. But in the way that they told the story, like, it's not even super clear on why or who would want
Completely.
this, you know?
So thanks, guys, for joining and sharing your perspectives. This was super interesting. Thanks a lot.
No worries.
Of course. Thank you.
Great chatting. Great to meet you, Rahul.
All right. Take care.
See you.